Okay, to get an idea of how fast I should go through some of the material that was gone over at DEF CON 16, how many of you actually attended the DEF CON 16 speech? Raise your hand. Okay, so a pretty good number, so we'll go through it pretty quick. So anyways, our old humor was the whole like series of tubes with Ted Stevens, but this year since I said like, shacking DOCSIS, I'm like, okay, are you saying like we're, shacking up with our modems or something? I don't know, but anyways, it's so you guys already know the backgrounds of most of you. I do research with CERC. It's actually what was CERC, now it's S-squared ERC, Security and Software Engineering Research Center, which is National Science Foundation Industry University Cooperative Research Center. And this is Bitemytaco. He's a root admin over at SB Hacker. And at DEF CON 16 we covered DOCSIS 2 and below. And our last speech actually led to a huge number of people coming over to the SB Hacker forums and discussing the modem technology, to include ISPs and contractors and everybody else. So what we're going to cover, pretty similar format to our last talk, is our requirements for our examples. We're going to do a previous speech overview, which I'll try to get through rather quickly since most of you are already familiar with it. Then we'll get into DOCSIS 3. Going to touch a little bit on packet cable. Then I'm going to go over the United States versus modem hackers. If you guys didn't know, after our DEF CON 16 speech, a number of people got arrested for making and selling modified modems. Then we'll go over some of the new tools and of course the new firmware, and then kind of basically leave it open for the future. So what do you need for our examples? A coax connection to the cable company. Now, everyone wanted me to stress that had seen the last speech that I'm talking about a legitimate connection to your cable company, because I guess supposedly I was telling people to climb poles or something, but I'm actually not. I'm saying, yeah, go ahead and pay for your connection to your cable company. In SPI JTAG cable, then there's a number of modems. Last time we were focused on the 5100 or the 5101. Now we're talking about the surfboard 6120, SPV 6220, DPC 3000, all DOCSIS 3 cable modems. Some soldering skills, or if you don't have soldering skills, SB Hacker actually sells, pre-modified modems, so then you can get around that. Then of course tools for flashing, which there's a number of those: USB JTAG NT, Haxomatic, which is a new thing from SB Hacker, and you can always do it yourself cables. So as we covered last time, why is it possible? Well, manufacturers didn't really put any physical security into the modems, so it made it really easy to modify them. The software, the software was very easy to modify as well. Then of course the ISPs, CMTSs aren't configured properly. There's security flaws in CMTS and in the iOS. And my stance is DOCSIS really even a good platform? I mean, in terms of security, I would say no. But it's still, they keep pushing out new versions of it, new specs, and in my opinion, it's not getting any better security-wise, but it's still in use, so you can still do this. Quick cable network overview. You've got your cable modem termination systems, which is where your internet connection is going through. Your customer database is where it's going to do a lookup, and that's based on your your MAC address. Your operation support system is basically you call in and you have a problem, then they can hook into that, look at the CMTS, see power levels, all that good stuff, and then we have your nodes are basically out there in your neighborhoods. So the big thing we pushed last time, we're talking about anonymous internet access, and we used Comcast. Comcast is still the largest ISP, so we're still using Comcast. The whole idea is if you take a modem that's not tied to an account and you hook it up online, it's going to ask you to sign up for service. But if you change the DNS servers, and I don't know why this still works. I actually figured they would have done something to change this, but for some reason this still works. You change the DNS service or servers and you're online with a modem that's not tied to an account or anything. You're completely online. So then you have some other things you can do, with config files to get it faster, or then we have disabling SNMP and things like that just to be a little more anonymous so that they won't be able to detect you as easily. Then once you get your anonymous access, like I said, a lot of this is all review, but anonymous access is good, but faster anonymous access is better. And as Taco says, don't forget kids, the faster you download, the bigger your penis is. Everybody knows that.
It's my forum signature.
Sure.
For the past 3 years.
Everybody's got a big e-penis. So one of the funny things to me is that even after our last talk, and we're pretty much showing them how this is all working. So we've got the DOCSIS 1, that's really not so much in use. You can still use it on most of the networks. But then you got DOCSIS 1.123. The config files from the last talk are still working on DOCSIS 3. To me, there's something wrong with that. I mean, but hey, whatever, you know. I guess they're still making money, so they're happy. Haxorware, you know, basically you go to, it's got a web interface, you can configure all that stuff. When we spoke last time, it was pretty much like a beta type thing. As far as we know, all the bugs have been worked out. It's very stable, it's very good. I have a huge following over it. I think it's, you know, personally, it's, you know, leaps and bounds ahead of the Sigma firmware. Then we go techniques for remaining anonymous. Like I said, still just going through review. Disable SNMP. Hide the modem's HFC IP address. These are just commands you can do to do that stuff. Hide the reported software version. You know, because if you're using like some weird software version that isn't what because they'll actually push out updates to your modem, so you want to try to match that. Because if you don't match that, they're like, hey, why, you know, we push out an update to this modem, why is it on a different, you know, software version? So all these settings, you know, basically put them in and it will make your modem look more normal. That's the whole idea. You want to just kind of lay under the radar. Cloning, I know SB Hacker really against cloning. I still said I want to go over it real quick. Yeah, you can clone modems. That's pretty much, I think, viewed by everyone as just really illegal, because you're taking someone else's modem settings and for like a true clone, taking their certificates and actually cloning that with your modem and getting on under their account. And so, you know, and especially in the nature that we can get on anonymously, why would you really want to clone someone? But we'll just leave it at don't do it. So that's a quick overview of that. That because they're on different CMTSs, you can clone them. Like you couldn't clone someone that's on the same CMTS as you. That's really the only restriction that you have. And then, actually, I think I'm just going to skip through this just because it's on the CD. If you want to do cloning, like we're pretty much saying don't do it, but if you really want to, the information's there. And this is always interesting to me is people always ask me, well, how anonymous are you? And from what I can tell, and from techs that I've talked to, people that work higher up some of the ISPs, they can pinpoint down to a node, is what I call a node, like a CMTS, yeah, a neighborhood, but not a specific house.
Or a tap.
Or a tap. So if you're like, you know, you're a big convicted hacker and you have a record, this might not be so anonymous for you. Because maybe if you pull off some large hack and they actually say, okay, we go to this IP address, it's not tied to an account, but we know it's in this general neighborhood. Are there any convicted hackers that live around here? Well, you know, there your name pops up. So I think it's still fairly anonymous, but it's not perfect. There's also, some ISPs will pull for poor signal levels. So the solution we gave is to use a drop amp. Had a pretty good response from that for people that were trying this stuff out. Said they were able to maintain good signal levels. Nobody had any, you know, any Comcast trucks or party vans or anything coming out and giving them a hard time. The ISPs sometimes do perform routine audits. I mean, sure you guys are familiar with, you know, your neighbor gets cable or something, the guy goes up there. If he's a contractor, he probably doesn't care. If it happens to be somebody that does care, they might look and say, hey, that tag's not supposed to be hooked in, and unhook it. And then, you know, some ISPs have adopted and implemented at a cost regional operating centers. I think you said South Florida?
Yeah,
somewhere?
South
Okay.
Florida.
He'll get into that later, but most of them haven't. So, list of precautions. If you're going to play around with this stuff, doing the, you know, diagnostic modem and actually putting modems online, personal precautions, I'd say don't transfer personal information over unencrypted connections, ever.
Sure, BPI is enabled.
Yeah. BPI enabled?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Keep an eye out for the party van, it's like to say. Cable technicians, FBI, whatever. You know, you see like a bunch of Comcast trucks coming, you might, you know, start unhooking your modems. Just a word of advice. Pay for service. I really, and you know, I'm not a lawyer, but I strongly feel that if you're paying for the service, then it is going to be a lot harder for them to say that you're actually breaking the law. I think at the point that you're paying for service and you're putting another modem online, it's technically a terms of service violation, but not a theft of service. I mean, that's still arguable, but just saying it's better to pay for service. If you're actually paying for service, they're definitely not going to go after you as hard as they would if you're just blatantly, you know, climbing the pole, hooking it in, and ripping it off. Use the modified modems to test, confirm, diagnose your existing service. That's the legitimate reason for these modems. So if you're buying them, that's what you're buying them for, not for any bad stuff that you might happen to do. Be mindful of HFC MAC addresses you may choose to clone. I'm actually going to say precautions, don't clone modems. But that was a couple years ago. We were, giving people maybe potentially bad advice. And yeah, okay, the next one, don't do that. That's leftover. Don't cut line identifiers off of cable lines. So the previous firmware, yeah, sure. Like I said, we were a little riskier at DEF CON 16, and we're trying to, we want to, because all the people were arrested, we're really trying to get this to be more legitimate. If we have everyone, I know.
There are plenty of legitimate uses. There really are.
Just saying, if we have people running around cutting tags off and hooking up modems, and get it somewhat legitimate. So the old firmware had all these different things it could do. I don't even really want to go over those. So I already went over the anonymous internet and that stuff. Like I said, it's all, you can read it. And at this point, I would like to hand over to Taco and let him start going over DOCSIS 3. You want that mic or this? Here we go.
I'll take it. Hey, everybody. So DOCSIS 3 has been certified by Cable Labs since our last presentation. Basically, it's just DOCSIS 2 with channel bonding, native IPv6, like it says, and optional AES encryption. Before they've been using 56-bit DES for BPI and BPI+. As far as the RF stuff goes, DOCSIS systems like in America, South America, use a 6 megahertz wide channel for the downstream. It can handle 43 megabits per downstream channel. EuroDOCSIS, if you're lucky enough to live in Europe, they have 8 megahertz channels, can handle about 55 megabits per channel. DOCSIS 3 spec calls for a minimum of 4 downstream and 4 upstream bonded channels. So basically, you're getting a lot more speed. Let's see here. So I had a little too much to drink before you come up here.
It's okay.
In America, basically, if you have 4 channels down, you're going to get up to 160 megabits, depending on what your cable operator offers. The potential for most upstream packages now get 10 to 15 megabits. The potential is for about 120. That'll come sometime in the future. The basic foundation of DOCSIS 3 is the two competing companies, Broadcom and Texas Instruments. Before, with DOCSIS 2, Texas Instruments had a garbage chipset. Motorola had a big fiasco with them. The 5120, it was a piece of shit. Comcast started pulling them from the field, blah, 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 long story short. Broadcom was the leader. Well, now with DOCSIS 3, Texas Instruments released the Puma 5 chip long before Broadcom released theirs. It's ARM v6 architecture. It runs Monte Vista Linux, open source of course. Right now there are 4 channels down, 4 channels up bonded on that CPU. TI just recently released an 8x4 Puma 5 chip, meaning 8 channels down, 4 channels up, to compete with the Broadcom BCM 3380, which is 8x4, which was really late to market, and the current firmwares for all those modems have a lot of bugs. And that runs on ECOS and its MIPS. How many people here have Haxorware modems? Good, good, good. See a lot of hands. Y'all know Rajko then, the Serbian prodigy who wrote Haxorware when he was 16 years old. He's now 18, and he plans on doing a Haxorware 3.0 probably sometime around the end of this year for the Broadcom modems. The TI modems, Linux open source, anybody can develop for it, and we're trying to find more developers because the possibilities with that are quite endless. Let's see. Every modem manufacturer has a Puma 5 modem out. Motorola, Cisco, Aris, Netgear, SMC, you name it. And then the Broadcom modems. The Motorola SPG 6580, it's a modem with a Wi-Fi in gateway. They released it about a month ago to Best Buy at retail, and they've already stopped shipping it because of so many firmware bugs. They released it with a serial port and a JTAG port, which they should have known better because, this modem hacking has been going on since, 2002, 2001. The next batch is supposed to have that stuff removed and hopefully some firmware bugs fixed. My favorite Broadcom one is the Cisco DPC 3010. Works pretty well. The Thompson, piece of shit, but you know, it's an option. The DCM is DOCSIS. The TCM is Euro DOCSIS. Let's see. Oh, and yeah, you know, ECOS MIPS, you got to have somebody who's Ryko codes everything in assembler. He plans on you know, doing Haxaware. But the Puma 5, I think, is going to be the big popular thing, since anybody can develop for it who, you know, is a Linux developer. As far as American DOCSIS 3 offerings, Comcast has the most D3 offered in America. You know, competitor to FiOS and other fiber to the whatever services. Comcast, you know, for $100 a month or $80 a month, you get 50 megs down, 10 megs up. There's a 100 meg down, 10 meg up business package, and it's about $300 a month. If you hack your 6120, you can pull 120 megs down and 15 megs up. You can. I'm not saying you should do that. Charter. Yeah, I don't wear a Comcast shirt. I don't have Comcast. It's just more for the irony. Charter has a 60 meg package, 175 meg coming soon. Cablevision up in New England, they claim the fastest internet in America, 101 megs down for $99 a month. It's pretty cool. Time Warner, Roadrunner, they are very slow in deploying DOCSIS 3 right now. They've hit New York City, I think Dallas, but they are dragging their heels. So if you got Time Warner, I feel sorry for you. I have Charter. I just got DOCSIS 3 about a month ago, and I love it. It's great. And then, oh, in Europe, some of those companies are already offering the 8-channel bonded downstreams. There's not that in the USA yet. One of my friends in Norway pulls about 170 megs down with a 6120. It's pretty sick. And the potential, potential with eight channels bonded downstream is about 400 megabits. Yeah. Packet cable. They really want me to talk more about this than I should. Just as a proof of concept, packet cable is, anybody have cable phone service, Comcast Digital Voice? Yeah, that's run on packet cable, which runs on top of DOCSIS. Basically, with a permission of the phone line owner, I was able to, in a couple of hours, hijack their phone line completely. No need to clone the MAC address. By simply cloning the FQDN, which is the fully qualified domain name, and a couple other pieces of information, you can hijack somebody's phone line who has cable phone service. And that's not something I recommend you do. I did it just to prove it could be done, and there's a lot of flaws in packet cable. I think it's more so vulnerabilities in the call management servers, not necessarily packet cable, but packet cables like DOCSIS, there's inherent flaws in it. And you know, basically, somebody pisses you off and you know enough information, you can hijack their phone and, you know, use your imaginations on that one. Let's see. I'm going to pass this back to Blake to talk about some of the people who have been arrested since 2008. There you go.
All these people getting arrested. Actually, at the end, you'll see a very important lesson. That is from one of my friends. He's actually in prison right now, unfortunately. But over, if anybody heard of the TJ Maxx hacks, Stephen Watt. And so I got a picture from him to show you guys, just to push a message to everybody, you know, the hacker community in general. We got Tom Swingler, a.k.a. Macedog. He was the first guy that was arrested. I think it was actually like big enough. It ended up being on G4 Hack of the Show or whatever. But
he's got a nose job.
So anyways, that heavy media attention. The case ended up being dismissed after 6 months without any official reason. But what ended up happening is Macedog then snitched on Mass Mods. So you also had TC and ISO. You guys, anybody who went to our last speech heard about them. They kind of started a lot of the cable modem hacking in general. That's Ryan Harris, a.k.a. Durandal. He was arrested in October of 2009, generally regarded the godfather of cable modem hacking. How did he get arrested? Snitched on by D-Shocker. He's currently out on bond awaiting trial. So we'll go on to the...
Durandal actually literally wrote the book. It's called Hacking the Cable Modem. No Starch Press publishes it. They probably have it in the vendor area, but literally he wrote the book on it. And he was the big fish, and they busted him based on a snitch. And we believe that he's innocent. but that's
Sure.
my opinion.
So then you have massmods.com, Matthew Dollery, arrested February 2010. He advertised pre-configured modems to steal service from Comcast, which is obviously a no-no. You don't say, hey, steal Comcast here. But still, again, he was raided after being snitched on by Mastodon. He's expected to plead guilty, of course, the way the case is set up. You have a, what's that?
This guy, he's so freaking stupid. He was on YouTube with videos, how to steal from Comcast, how to steal Dish Network with an FTA box. On his forums, he had tutorials on how to get away with murder. He sold lockpicks. This guy's just a freaking moron. So he's getting what he deserved, but yeah, he got snitched on. So that's the bottom line.
So we had the very small bust in South Florida where theft of services apparently...
In South Florida, there's a joke that trafficking illegal cable modems has taken over popularity in trafficking cocaine. And the people in the retirement homes down there are sitting there with chrome rims on their wheelchairs, soldering up modems and shit.
So a couple key things is all the current arrests have involved theft of service. Selling pre-configured devices that are set up to steal service.
Except for Durandal, he's innocent.
Okay, well, except for Durandal. And using modems for legitimate diagnostic purposes is still, by our belief, completely legal. The key factor that I like to point out is that the majority of arrests have been by snitches. So it comes to my next slide, which he wants me to send a picture to this to him in prison. So if anyone takes pictures of this, can actually email it to me. But that's a brief message from Stephen Watt. He gave a speech at DEF CON 10 with Gobbles and Silvio, and he's a Unix terrorist, but he's basically saying, hey, stop snitching. That's why half of you guys end up going to jail is narc each other out. If everybody would just not say things, half the time they wouldn't even have, sometimes they have evidence, but a lot of the times they wouldn't. Now we're going to go ahead and go into the new tools and firmware, which Taco is going to cover that. Ready? Okay. There you go. Sorry, bouncing back and forth.
Okay, we got the Motorola 6120 out about a year ago, started playing with it. We went over before I had an orange modem with me, the Motorola factory diagnostic modem with the shelled firmware. We had that firmware before the modems even came out, and basically, Durandal, the guy from TCN ISO, for a while was working on something called Dream OS, which is going to be a Linux-based operating system that could just do anything. It never came to fruition since he got busted, but lo and behold, Texas Instruments released their reference firmware for all the Puma 5 modems, Monte Vista Linux. And so basically, they gave us Dream OS, fully capable diagnostic firmware to consumers, and that's very cool. Let's see. We don't have a name for the firmware yet. Nothing cool like Haxorware. We're just calling it SBH Alpha. We're on build 1.1 right now. It's kind of like DDWRT, OpenWRT. Anybody can develop for it. Motorola and all the manufacturers, they've released their source code, but I'm going to say this, and hopefully this is not slander, but they're all in violation of the GPL because they have not released compilable sources. They've not released the Monte Vista toolchain. Whatever they're releasing can be compiled, but it won't run on the ARM architecture. So hopefully maybe someone in this room can help us get Motorola to stop violating the GPL. Anybody? Lawyers? No? I'll talk to EFF. Last time we spoke here, there were about 25,000 users on the SB Hacker forum. As of today, we have about 69,000, close to 70,000 people on our forum. And let's see. I talked to Ryko. He plans on making Haxorware 3.0 for their Broadcom modems sometime around the end of this year. So those of you who have Haxorware know that's going to be freaking awesome. And then DOCSIS 2 modems mostly use parallel flash chips, and we used JTAG to flash those. All of the new modems, DOCSIS 3 and whatnot, have SPI flash chips. So we've had to switch over to new programmers that support SPI and system programming. There's the USB JTAG NT. It's a proven device. It's very good. Ryko, the guy who did Haxorware, has been working on for 6 months to a year the Haxomatic using a FTDI chip. It does JTAG, SPI, and it has a serial port, USB to TTL. It's all in one. I actually have one right here. It's really small. Oh, there's a picture of it there. And then that works with Tom's JTAG utility, the software that Ryko's writing, blah, blah, blah. You can build your own parallel port SPI programmer. But that's for, all the new modems have SPI flash chips, basically. Let's see. The SPH alpha firmware, we really didn't have to do a whole lot to it because Texas Instruments gave us basically everything we need. We just modified some of the scripting so you can force your own config file. Disabling firmware updates from your ISP is automatic. If you want to enable it, you can do so. Disabling SNMP so they can't pull your modem after it's online. Ryko's a MIPS guy. He doesn't know ARM, but he actually figured out how to disable BPI Plus and BPI, so we're using that for people who choose to do so. Now, if you disable BPI, all of your traffic goes over the network unencrypted, and the nature of HFC networks is that your neighbors can sniff your traffic, and if it's not encrypted, your email passwords and anything not secure is going to be, vulnerable to your neighbors running Wireshark or whatever.
At DEF CON 16, there's a packet-o-matic speech.
Guy Martin.
So it actually is a tool to sniff DOCSIS traffic. If anybody's interested, you can look that up.
Yeah, he gave a speech at the same time we did at 16, and a lot of DOCSIS engineers were very concerned after they saw the video of it, and they've all started enabling BPI. It took Charter, BPI has been around since '99. It took Charter about 10 years to enable it, but they were bankrupt, so can't blame them. Let me see. We have the one of the checks they use now is checking your firmware version. We have the latest firmware for this. Basically, we're working with Motorola 6120 firmware. The latest version is spoofed, so it reports to the cable company you're running the latest firmware version. We're trying to add a feature where you can change it to whatever you want. Like in Haxorware, you can spoof any modem you want, and it looks like you're running that modem. And right now, there's no web GUI like with Haxorware. You can change all the settings. It'll also be done via serial port or SSH. There's two reasons for that. One is because Haxorware invited a lot of morons who don't even know how to run a computer into this community, who started stealing service and just trying to ruin the hobby for everybody. So one of the reasons is that. The other reason is tool chain issues. Like I said, some of those companies are violating the GPL, not releasing the Monte Vista tool chain. We only know one person with a working tool chain for the Puma 5, but I'm sure plenty of people in the audience here are, gifted Linux developers and could write their own tool chains. Let's see. Yeah, I'm going to set up a demo and show you guys the 6120 shell and the Haxomatic, and Blake's going to go over a few things.
Yeah, while you guys are doing that, what I was going to say is, how many of you guys, maybe show of hands, have heard of DDWRT? Or any of that type. So this is the kind of the same thing. What's going on with this? Now that you have Linux on your modems, you have a whole world of potential that you could do. So you can port all this stuff to it, run all different types of tools and whatnot. So what SB Hacker is really looking for is to get more people that could build things like what was built into DDWRT to put this onto the modems and really give you a lot of power on your modems. And I mean, who knows what all. I don't know if they could handle snort or whatnot, but I remember there are people using like DDWRT with snort and things like that.
All the current modems have 8 or 16 meg flash chips and 32 or 64 megs of RAM, so there's plenty of power there to be used.
So that's really, looking for people to get more involved with this project. That's the new, with the new Surfboard Hacker firmware, since it does run on Linux, the idea is instead of having just like one guy coding it like Ryko, actually having a community of people contributing and helping to develop it.
Oh, and this is the Motorola SB6120. This is the most popular DOCSIS 3 cable modem. You can buy it at Fry's, Best Buy, whatever. It's the most popular one. It's really hacked, blah, blah, blah. Let's see. I'm going to load up. It has a breakout board installed on it. We've got a USB to serial port, and we've got a little port here for flashing the SPI chip. And inside, the board is wired directly to the SPI chip. And when we power it on and cut the cable, it cuts the power to the CPU. For those of you who are familiar with SPI programming, so you can program the chip directly, and it's quite a bit faster than using JTAG. Is this going to work? There you go. Bootloader is decompressing the firmware, starting all the processes. Oh, it's maximized. Oh, you're not missing anything. Let me, and this has a BusyBox Linux shell and also a Texas Instruments shell. Okay, here we go. So what TI has given us is basically, like I said, fully capable diagnostic firmware. If you go into the shell and type in prod show, oops. You got the the hardware revision, serial number, file names for spoofing firmware versions, change the modem's IP, the MAC addresses, basically. And then if you type prod set, you can go in and change all those parameters, and then save it, and it's very simple. You're done. If you want to change something, let's see. And outside of that, we have the standard BusyBox Linux console here. Okay. So basically, it's very powerful. Linux on a modem. You do whatever you want with it. Next, I'm going to show you guys Haxomatic. After Haxaware, Ryko has been working on this programmer, like we talked about. The Haxomatic does SPI, JTAG, and has a serial port as well. Where is it? He was up apparently all night last night programming this for me, just as a DEF CON demonstration. And there's a lot of people who are working with this FTDI chip, making their own programmers. This one's just targeted for, it does cable modems, Xbox 360 NAND, anything with SPI. I know he programmed a Foxconn motherboard BIOS with it. He programmed an Acer, one of those new 3D monitors with it, just because he felt like it. No, USB JTAG has a Cypress chip and some other chip in it. This is FTDI, just one chip. I have a USB JTAG NT with me. It's a good thing, but the software sucks. It really does. This software is GUI, and it's trying to be more user friendly. And this is actually about twice as fast on SPI reads and a little bit faster on writes. It generally reads about 2 megabytes per second. And writes, the 6120 will write about 200K a second. The newer expansion flash chips will write about 475K a second. I do not have one of those modems with me that has one of the newer chips. So I plug it in, it cuts the power to the CPU, and let's see. Oh, and the Haxomatic lets you choose your clock speed for programming, 30 megahertz right now. And detect, we've got a expansion flash chip, and then just reading the flash right now. Right now he's still finishing up the software. We're beta testing it, and see, it's pretty fast. Read 8 megs right there. So we're going to put this into mass production once the software is finished, and it's a really cool device. So I just read the whole flash. I can write it back. I can program any of these areas, flash the firmware, whatever, what have you. There's another application that does, you can program PIC controllers as well. Basically anything that this chip will handle. Let's see. Oops. Hey.
I'm going to get back to the slide we were at. We just keep hitting right. We were at,
Sorry, I'm trying to figure out where we left off.
keep going. It's on SPA checker. Keep going. Couple more. One more. There you go. That's where you were.
Already went over that stuff.
There you go.
Oh, new tools.
Yep.
There's some various tools that some of our admins and members have written. This one is SNMP cert grabber. will scan the HFC network for modems that are in factory mode. If it finds one, it'll grab the certs, the MACs, and whatever you need if you're going to be cloning.
Of course, like we said, don't do that.
Exactly, yeah.
There may be
the way I
it,
see this, if you pay for, say Comcast, you pay for 50 megabit service, you're paying $100 a month. If you want to run a diagnostic modem for whatever reason, it shouldn't matter. You're paying them, and it's not illegal. It's just against the terms of service. And if they catch you, they will ban you for life. But it's not against the law. So there you go. That's the way I see it. But they probably don't agree with me because I called them monkeys last time I was here. And there's a Comcast executive who's like their head of broadband, who's an active member of the SP Hacker Forum. And when noobs come on and say, "Oh, my modem's not working anymore. Why? Blah blah blah," he comes on and talks shit to them and laughs at them. But they actually, Comcast and the rest of the big ISPs use our forum to find out what the holes in their system are and how to fix them.
But we've had but they failed to fix them after 2 years.
This is true. How much time do we have? I thought after speaking, in 2008, that they would immediately increase security. The major companies, Comcast, Charter, Time Warner, Cox, really have not started increasing security until this year, enforcing BPI Plus, which verifies the MAC address based on a certificate, which is issued by VeriSign. And the reason for all the security holes still is that they're still allowing DOCSIS 1.0 modems on their networks. DOCSIS 1.0 had no way to verify that. All it has is BPI, which encrypts your traffic, but they did not have BPI Plus, which verifies the MAC and serial number to the certificate. And Comcast has tried to get rid of all the 1.0 modems on their networks, but there's still holes in Comcast because their walled garden is not configured correctly, and the rest of the ISPs just, there's just so many holes in DOCSIS 1, and they don't want to spend the money to go out in the field and replace all these modems with DOCSIS 2 modems, 3, whatever. What's that? Depends on where you are, though. I've heard Cox Las Vegas is fairly secure, but it really depends. What's that? I don't know. I don't have them, but I know people are hacking DOCSIS 3 on Cox, but some ISPs take more time than others to figure out how to do it. He's right. This is a program one of the other admins wrote that it allows you to back up. If you're going to hack your modem, you want to back up the flash chip before you do that, because if you just fuck it up, you want to have an original backup. If you don't have an SPI programmer, you can use this utility to back it up via the virtual COM port through the. They're using the U-boot bootloader for the Puma 5 modems. So that's pretty cool. People are wondering, how do I back up my full flash without buying this $60 programmer? Well, we have an application for it now. Blake, do you want to talk about this?
I can. I'll stay here. Basically, the future, I'm not really sure what they're going to do about the problems will actually fix them or not. But one thing that we had thought, the botnets, the faster that home users' internet connections get, the bigger threat botnets will be. If you think about it, like botnets on like dial-up is not, you have to have a huge number of machines actually cause, sufficient denial of service attack. If you have people on DOCSIS 3 with these really high speeds, all of a sudden you don't need, as many computers. So that's always
I'm sure some of you have dedicated servers. Average your port speed's probably 100 megabits. Some of you have a gigabit. Take 10 DOCSIS 3 modems on Comcast with 10 megs up. That's a 10 modem botnet to knock out your server. So they just have to be really mindful of that, because if people are getting exploited and being used for botnets, it's it could get bad. It could get really bad.
Or on the other side, not just botnets, but if somebody were inclined to get a number of diagnostic modems and put them all online, like he said, put 10 diagnostic modems online, and all of a sudden you can start taking down pretty heavy servers in terms of denial of service attack. Also, with the futures of, I think there's a good possibility they're going to keep trying to crack down on the modem hacking, but it's kind of tough, and I haven't actually seen any real convictions. That's what I'm wondering, what's going to happen with these cases.
Yeah, Mastodog's case got thrown out. Mass Mods, he told me he's going to plead guilty, and he is guilty, so he should. Durandal will not plead guilty. He's going to go to trial if he has to. I just lost my train of thought.
You can go on to the next slide if you want.
I'm sorry, I had too much to drink. I'm so sorry.
Actually, skip this. Just role playing. It's not too fun. All stuff we've already went over. Go on one more. Okay. Right again. There you go. Okay. So problems and solutions. One thing that we had brought up last time, and DOCSIS 3 does have in the spec for AES, but so far it doesn't look like many people are using it, is that if you're using like 56-bit DES, that's crackable. That's kind of scary for your privacy when you already have the packet-o-matic, right? So that can watch your traffic. Your neighbors can see your traffic if it's unencrypted. With the BPI plus, if it's just 56-bit DES, probably only a matter of time if somebody's motivated to actually write a plugin for packet-o-matic and go ahead and start sniffing all the encrypted DOCSIS traffic, which maybe people already are doing it. I don't know.
I want to add something. Hacksarware has the ability to create and generate self-signed BPI plus certificates if you change your MAC. That was actually something that Motorola added to the SB4100, I believe. It's a DOCSIS 1 modem. They wanted it to be DOCSIS 1.1 compliant, so Motorola wrote these code where you can sign your own certificates, and we took that and Ryko put it into Hacksarware. However, it doesn't really work because Cisco CMTS by default will not accept self-signed certificates. But like say a third world country where they want to have 4100s keep working, they will enable self-signed certificates to work, and there you go. So there is code to generate the self-signed ones, but if you want a real certificate, you got to get it from VeriSign, and nobody has yet to crack BPI plus.
Sure. And we had clone detection last time. Really hasn't been anything that I've seen that's come out to try to really detect that with the actual perfect clones, meaning you actually clone the certificates and everything else. It seems like they're still getting away with it. So from my perspective, situation for the ISPs is pretty bleak. That's why I said I don't really think DOCSIS is a good protocol in terms of security on providing people with internet access. I mean, it's great for us as hackers if you want, anonymous internet, or you want to be able to put as much stuff online as you want or get whatever speed you want. But from a ISP perspective, I'd say it's pretty bleak. I don't see them coming up with any solution in the at least immediate future.
The way I explained this to Blake, DOCSIS 1.1 was certified about 10 years ago. DOCSIS 3.0 was certified in 2008. Basically, all the U.S. cable operators are running DOCSIS 1.1 networks with channel bonding. So they're using 10-year-old technology and just bonding the channels to give you more speed, and they're not using the AES security or anything else. So they're really, and it's mostly because their admins don't know what the hell they're doing. They're getting better at it because they're going to SB Hacker and seeing what they need to do to fix the holes, but they just don't know what the hell they're doing. Let's see. Okay.
There's a little bit of stuff for you guys to remember. How to get anonymous, fast internet on DOCSIS network, the equipment used, how to stay anonymous, different firmwares, which at this point, pretty much if you're using the older, like 5101, you're talking about Hacksarware, you're on the newer stuff, the Hacksarware Alpha, why it's possible, hardware security, what DOCSIS 3 really is, bonding and faster speeds. And development and reversing is as easy as your sister. It was added by Deb Delay. He couldn't make it here this year, but
Deb spoke with us last time, but he couldn't make it out. But yeah, he added this for us.
These new security adoptions so far, something they can be defeated. It's kind of a thing with security. It seems to be this recurring trend of you keep having the same problems. Every time there's a new device or a new technology, it still has problems from the past, and it just keeps repeating itself. So people just keep breaking it. So enabling one security feature on a CMTS may mean disabling or sacrificing another.
It seems like every time Cisco releases a new code train for their CMTS iOS, it creates new security and then opens up old bugs. I know, and Cable Labs has a tiered qualification system for the CMTSs. They have bronze, silver, and gold, I believe, like Olympic medals. Cisco and Aris, which is the majority of use in the world, they're all bronze certified, meaning they can only do downstream bonding, not upstream. Casa Systems has gold certification for theirs, but they're really a small company and nobody's using them. I have a friend down in South Florida who has upstream bonding, and he's the only person I know who has 4 channels bonded upstream, but he still only gets 5 megs up. But it's coming, and potential for upstream speed is DOCSIS has become more symmetrical as opposed to the past where it's been really asymmetrical.
Thanks.
Sorry about that.
We have our thanks. I have a couple minutes left. All the anonymous network technicians that answered questions about OSS for me, Durandal, he essentially started this whole thing, so a big thanks to him for that. Got Ryko, DevDelay, BAT84, Detox, ScanMan1, BM Hoff, Spender, Snaggle, PeerUp, Cisco Ninja, the UT, and the entire surfboard hacker community. The anonymous cable modem hackers who shared their stories with us and actually gave us enough information to verify that that was the case. Of course, the manufacturers for creating such insecure hardware and software, sbhacker.net and soldierx.com. And thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, to get an idea of how fast I should go through some of the material that was gone over at DEF CON 16, how many of you actually attended the DEF CON 16 speech? Raise your hand. Okay, so a pretty good number, so we'll go through it pretty quick. So anyways, our old humor was the whole series of tubes with Ted Stevens, but this year, since I said shacking DOCSIS, I'm like, okay, are you saying we're shacking up with our modems or something? I don't know, but anyways, it's so you guys already know the backgrounds of most of you. I do research with CERC. It's actually what was CERC, now it's S2 ERC, Security and Software Engineering Research Center, which is National Science Foundation Industry University Cooperative Research Center. And this is Bitemytaco. He's a root admin over at SB Hacker. And at DEF CON 16, we covered DOCSIS 2 and below. And our last speech actually led to a huge number of people coming over to the SB Hacker forums and discussing the modem technology, to include ISPs and contractors and everybody else. So what we're going to cover, pretty similar format to our last talk, is our requirements for our examples, modems, so then you can get around that. Then of course tools for flashing, which there's a number of those, USB JTAG NT, Haxomatic, which is a new thing from SB Hacker, and you can always do it yourself cables. So as we covered last time, why is it possible? Well, manufacturers didn't really put any physical security into the modems, so it made it really easy to modify them. The software, the software was very easy to modify as well. Then of course the ISPs, CMTSs aren't configured properly. There's security flaws in CMTS and in the iOS. And my stance is DOCSIS really even a good platform? I mean, in terms of security, I would say no, but it's still, they keep pushing out new versions of it, new specs, and in my opinion, it's not getting any better security-wise, but it's still in use, so you can still do this. Quick cable network overview. You've got, your cable modem termination systems, which is where your internet connection is going through. Your customer database is where it's going to do a lookup, and that's based on your, your MAC address. Your operation support system is basically you call in and you have a problem. We're going to do a previous speech overview, which I'll try to get through rather quickly since most of you are already familiar with it. Then we'll get into DOCSIS 3. Going to touch a little bit on packet cable. Then I'm going to go over the United States versus modem hackers. If you guys didn't know, after our DEF CON 16 speech, a number of people got arrested for making and selling modified modems. Then we'll go over some of the new tools and of course the new firmware, and then kind of basically leave it open for the future. So what do you need for our examples? A coax connection to the cable company. Now, everyone wanted me to stress that had seen the last speech that I'm talking about a legitimate connection to your cable company, because I guess supposedly I was telling people to climb poles or something, but I'm actually not. I'm saying, yeah, go ahead and pay for your connection to your cable company. In SPI JTAG cable, then there's a number of modems. Last time we were focused on the 5100 or the 5101. Now we're talking about the surfboard 6120, SPV 6220, DPC 3000, all DOCSIS 3 cable modems. Some soldering skills, or if you don't have soldering skills, SB Hacker actually sells, pre-modified modems. Don't forget, kids, the faster you download, the bigger your penis is. Everybody knows.
It's my forum signature.
Sure.
For the past 3 years.
Everybody's got a big e-penis. So one of the funny things to me is that even after our last talk, and we're pretty much showing them how this is all working. So we've got the DOCSIS 1. That's really not so much in use. You can still use it on most of the networks. But then you got DOCSIS 1.123. The config files from the last talk are still working on DOCSIS 3. To me, there's something wrong with that. I mean, but hey, whatever, you know. I guess they're still making money, so they're happy. Haxorware, you know, basically you go to it, it's got a web interface, you can configure all that stuff. When we spoke last time, it was pretty much like a beta type thing. As far as we know, all the bugs have been worked out. It's very stable, it's very good. I have a huge following over it. I think it's, you know, personally it's, you know, leaps and bounds ahead of the Sigma firmware. Then we go techniques for remaining anonymous. Like I said, still just going through review. Disable SNMP. Hide the modem's HFC IP address. These are just commands you can do to do that stuff. Problem. Then they can, you know, hook into that, look at the CMTS, see power levels, all that good stuff. And then we have your nodes are basically, you know, out there in your neighborhoods. So the big thing we pushed last time, we're talking about anonymous internet access. And we used Comcast. Comcast is still the largest ISP, so we're still using Comcast. The whole idea is if you take a modem that's not tied to an account and you hook it up online, it's going to ask you to sign up for service. But if you change the DNS servers, and I don't know why this still works. I actually figured they would have done something to change this, but for some reason this still works. You change the DNS service or servers and you're online. With a, you know, a modem that's not tied to an account or anything. You're completely online. So then you have some other things you can do, you know, with config files to get it faster, or then, you know, we have disabling SNMP and things like that just to be a little more anonymous so that they won't be able to detect you as easily. Then once you get your anonymous access, like I said, a lot of this is all review, but anonymous access is good, but faster anonymous access is better. And as Taco says, you know,